Hello, my name is Kyle, and welcome to my short tutorial, well, hopefully, on how to draw anime eyes. Anime eyes are some of my favourite things to draw in art at the moment, and I'm sure that's mostly evidenced by my previous drawings of them. So I thought it'd be good to make a small tutorial just to show how I do them, for anyone else who might be interested. There we go. Okay, so the first step, of course, is to map out your eye and what you want it to look like. I've chosen this type of style of eye just because it was easy to draw real quick. So you got the lash, the outer pupil, and the inner pupil. The inner pupil is always going to be a lot smaller than you think it will, trust me. The next step is to map out where the whites of the eyes will go. For this, you make a placeholder image, right here. This line can be as thick or as thin as you want, but it should always come from the tip of the lash here to around somewhere around here. Like, to the point of the lashes here. It doesn't matter how thick or thin it is, because we're going to be getting rid of it very soon. For this, make sure you turn off the outer pupil and inner pupil, just so the white covers all the area. And then you can turn them back on. And then turn the placeholder off, because you won't need that anymore. Now, I like to give a very tiny amount of blur to the whites of the eyes, just to make it look more feathery, I suppose. If you don't like it to look feathery, then you can skip this, absolutely, but I like a little bit of blur. I think it makes it look a bit better. Next, you want to fill in the lash. The lash is mostly just going to be the same color as the outline of the lash, because we'll be coloring it in with actual proper colors later on. Make sure there's no little white bits on the tips there. The fill bucket tool can be really fickle sometimes, and it will leave whites in sharp points. So make sure you get rid of all those. There you go. Now, a little trick. If you go to color in the lash later on, you'll want to use like a clipping mask tool, of course, to like not get any color anywhere else. But if you do that, then the outline won't be colored in, because the fill and the outline are two different things. So what I like to do is I like to duplicate the outline, just so we have it on hand, and then combine the fill and the outline together. So now they're one thing. Now if you go to color it, it'll color the entire thing and look a lot better. So, next step is to obviously choose the type of color that you want for your eye. Because it's anime style, you are not constrained by the laws of reality, so it can be absolutely any color that you want. Personally, for this tutorial, I have chosen a nice red. Mainly because it's a color I haven't really practiced with much myself, but it should be easy. The next step is to get rid of the outer pupil outline, because we won't be needing that. And I do like to give a little bit of blur, a very tiny amount of blur to the eye color. If you blur it too much, it won't have like a circular look, and it will just look a bit weird, personally, I think. Okay, next step I like to do is to give the whites of the eyes the shadow that they need. This can be mostly any color you want, so long as it's a dark color. This is where the light will not be hitting the eye. It's mostly along the top, along this area, and it goes down into here. So we'll be doing that now. Then fill it in, and then guess what? We'll be giving it a little bit of blur. You'll be hearing that a lot, because a little bit of blur can go a long way when drawing these types of things. Even if you're mostly doing hard shading, just adding a little bit of blur to things can really help. This needs a little bit more. Around that. Yeah, that looks good, I think. Next, you wanna make it so that this white shadow also crosses over into the eye. I just have layers set up for when I want to show what they are. So for this you can take either just a darker color of the eye, or what I like to do just to make it look like actual shadow is to just go pure black and then reduce the opacity of it later. So make it so it crosses over there. There we go. And then reduce the opacity just so it's not pure black, because there's no such thing as pure black. And give that a bit of blur too. Now, if you want this to be darker, you can go over it again later. Personally, I think I'm going to leave it there. Next step is to add a little bit of lower light to the eye. This is mostly if the eye is looking toward the light. It'll have a little bit of lighter shade down here. I've chosen this color. And it'll go just along here like this. This also helps to give the eye a little bit of extra definition. It doesn't want to cross the middle point, but it needs to be like a curve upward to the middle point, if that makes any sense. Kinda like that. That looks good. Next, we want to add a little bit more dark to it. For this, you want to get some black and run it along the edges, but not so that it crosses into the middle at all. Just along the edges like that. And then, of course, make sure that the opacity has been reduced. I reduced it by 33%. I think that looks nice. Now, for the pupil does not want to look just like a black dot. It want to look like it's actually part of the eye. So what I like to do is that I take some black and I make a few little lines coming out from the middle of it. These don't need to be neat. These can be as messy as you want. They can be as neat as you want, because we are going to be blurring them. So I'm gonna make it look like that. And then our favorite step, a bit of Gaussian blur. Again, this doesn't want to be too blurry, or else it just won't look like a pupil. Personally, I think that looks good. We just need to thin down a bit of the edges here. If you don't like how some of the edges look, you can always just take a soft eraser and go at it. Yeah, I think that looks nice. Okay, next step. This is a personal preference of mine. I like to include little lines along the outside, the outer edges of the pupil here. The lines won't look like this, but this is just a personal preference. You do not need to include this if you don't want to. And then what I do is that I take the fingertip tool in Clip Studio Paint, and I make... That's a bit too big. There we go. And I make zigzag crossings in them like this. Like that. And then, of course, we add a little bit of blur just to make it stand in. There we go. Maybe reduce the opacity a little bit. Kind of like that. I like how that looks. I think it adds a bit more definition to the eye. But of course, you do not need to do this if you don't want to. You can add whatever little details you want before going on to this next step, which is including more of the, like, bounce color of the eye, as it were. So what I mean by this is that if I go to, like, this example here of a sapphire drawing I drew a while ago, these little colors in here, we want to add these. So these colors, they don't need to be, like, uniform, I suppose you could say. They can be anything you really want, but what I like to do when deciding these colors is get the base color of the eye, so this nice pinkish red, and then saturate it to the max, and move the color wheel ever so slightly in a different direction. So this way, it's adhering to the colors that you want to use. Because if I were to use, say, like green or something, it wouldn't really look correct. So it's landed on orange. So this is what we'll do. We'll use an orange. And you want to make thin and thick lines kind of emanating out from the pupil in a circular way so that it looks like it makes it look like a sphere. Again, these lines can be as thick or as thin as you want. They don't even need to be lines. They can be just dots if you like. So long as it looks like they're emanating out of the eye. Don't be afraid about crossing these if you are using them. They are mostly in the background of the eye, sort of like the pupil. And you can do as many or as little of these as you want. I think that's good as a starting colour. Next, if you want to add more to that, you can take the colour wheel in the opposite direction. This will land us on pink, which will give us pink. Now, I have of course already added the pink layer to this, which I will now correct. You don't really want them to be crossing each other, if you can help it. There we go. Of course, doing them in advance, I don't really know where I'm going to be putting the orange ones. You can add lines around the edge as well. You can add little dots around the edge. You can do whatever you want with it. Now, for the final colour I like to use 3 colours. This colour is going to be completely different from the main colour palette we've been using. So when I said that, oh, you don't want to be using green, this is where you can use green if you want. It helps it stand out a lot more. I have chosen to use blue. A nice, rich, deep blue. As I say, this will help the eye stand out a lot more because it's a colour you wouldn't normally see in combination with oranges, pinks, and reds. It gives it a kind of mystique, if you will. I think that's looking very nice so far. Just add a few more here. Again, you can add as many or as little as you want. Doesn't really matter. So long as you don't overload the entire eye and you can't really make out any details. But I don't think we've done that here. I think that looks very nice. Now, I do think that the top needs to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to add a little bit more black to the top. Kind of like this, and then reduce. Kind of like that. That's a little bit better. Now the next step is including the lights, the proper lights in your eye. The little white dots that you always see in the eye. These can go absolutely anywhere you want, so long as it does not cross the shadows that we've established previously. So, not across the edge. You can do it across the edge if you want, using stuff like that. But the little dots won't cross the edge, so they'd be places like here. And here. Again, add as many or as little of these as you want. And don't worry about crossing the little colour patches that we've put in previously. And then, our favourite step, we add a little bit of blur. Just so it looks like bounce light is coming off of the eye. And then you can thin them down with a soft eraser later on, should you wish. Like that. Very nice. It's all coming together. I think that is all the steps that I use for the pupil. Once you've done all that, you can go back to the whites of the eyes, and then include a little bit of shadow behind the eye, but not much, because it's not... You don't really see that in most things, so this is a personal thing, a personal preference that I do, just to make the eye pop out more. Add a little bit of shadow behind there, and reduce it. Yeah, I think it makes it pop out just a little bit more. Finally, we come to the lash. Now, for the lash, I don't tend to spend much time on it. What I like to do is I like to take 2 colours that are you know, mostly in the color palette of the thing that we've used for the eye. So say, take a rich crimson red, and then run a bit of it along the bottom, and then change it up a bit and run a bit across the top. So for the crimson red that we've chosen, I'll run a little bit of it across the bottom. And then, of course, soft erase as you wish, wherever you don't want it to be seen. This just adds a little bit more definition to the eyelash, or else it's just a plain black, which isn't too interesting to look at. And then I'll take a sort of pinkish red for the top. Yeah, a lot like the pupil color that we used. And then just run it across the top. You do still want some of the black to shine through, because then it creates a good contrast. But otherwise, I think that's it. There we go. We've just created an anime eye from absolutely nothing. I think that looks very nice. Anyway, so that was my tutorial on how to draw anime eyes. I hope you found it insightful. I hope it helps you. And I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you very much for watching.